Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ed Clark. I'm an electrical expert that was retained back in 2007 by Colbreth and Schroeder, representing Allstate, to investigate and look at all the ongoing fires in Southern California at the time to make a determination if any of the utilities had anything to do with starting the fires. First of all, I'm a former transmission substation engineer out of Southern California Edison Company. I own my own high voltage electrical, high voltage construction company for 15 years actually. I've been testifying as an electrical expert since the middle 90s. I've done a lot of work as an expert for Sempra Energy on cases directly related to the effects of ground current and ground faults, which is what I'm going to demonstrate for you here today. So I don't want there to be any misunderstanding. At all times since 2007, San Diego Gas and Electric, its executives, and the executives from Sempra Energy, including the spokesperson, Ms. Donovan, has been fully aware of what started the Witch Creek fire. So I'm going to give you a demonstration today. I'm going to show you, first of all, what I gave all San Diego Gas and Electric, its executives, CAL FIRE, and the Public Utilities Commission back in 2007. These are some blown up photographs that I have. The design problem that San Diego Gas and Electric has is they have a pole with two down guys on each side connected by the same bolt as you see here. The reason why there's a down guy on both sides is because out in this area, wind blows very high rates of speed both directions. So they do that so they can hold the pole up. That's the design problem. These two down guys are supposed to be separated by at least 12 inches. They connected them at the same bolt. Why is that a problem? You can see I've given you a demonstration here. When there's ground current that's caused by a transmission or a utility fault, whether it be, you've all seen on the news where equipment blows up, cars hit poles, you see lines fall to the ground. Any of those types of instances causes ground current to flow back to the source substation that's delivering the electricity. So that electricity travels by way of the earth going back to the source, and it jumps on the path of least resistance. In a case like this, where you have a ground rod in the ground holding up these down guys, you have a path of electricity that goes up through this bolt that's conductive and down the other side and continues on its way. I've simulated a ground fault by connecting it to a 12-volt battery. I'm going to show you in just a minute the effects of this design on what it does. Okay? Just like you see here in the model, we have connectors that are very loose out in the field. These connectors are very loose, and as the pole moves back and forth, they make and break contact. You can see what we found in the field, high areas of carbon deposits caused by electrical arcing. Carbon deposits left on plastic covers that we took to a lab and verified scientifically that those are caused by electrical arcs. We found holes in metal caused by electrical arc. One thing you must know, during my investigations, when I was retained by Colbreth and Schroeder, they partnered me up with two very intelligent former fire captains, one by the name of Brad Phillipson and one by the name of Robert Reinhardt. Both worked for Larry Rohr Investigations. Two very nice guys, knew what they were doing, former fire captains, non-electrical. I was the electrical guy, they were the arson experts, okay? They took the deposit samples, took them to a lab, sent me the results. So everything that I'm going to share with you was handled by somebody besides me. I find it very interesting that since 2007, with all these thousands of lawsuits that have been going on, anybody who's attempted to utilize me and depose me, they've either settled for or somehow they prevented my deposition from taking place. I was again scheduled last Friday. It was delayed till this next Monday. They're in court again today trying to squash my deposition and have a judge not let somebody exercise their right to depose me to understand what happened. At the same time, to my knowledge, neither of these two gentlemen have either been deposed. The gentleman that I worked for at the time, Colbreth and Schroeder, signed a confidentiality agreement to allow me to tell SDG&E what their design problem was. Interestingly enough, I wouldn't sign it. Ladies and gentlemen, I wouldn't go along with a corporate cover-up. That's exactly what this is. SDG&E has had full knowledge of this design problem. Not only did it cause the 2007 Witch Creek fire, I also found evidence and can prove that it caused the 2003 Cedar fire where a lost hunter was falsely prosecuted. It also started the 2003 Paradise fire. I showed SDG&E where it started. They promptly went out and changed that pole so nobody else could see it. Okay? So that's what we're dealing with. All of the information that I'm going to share with you was also given to the California Public Utilities Commission. I went up to LA, met with 4 gentlemen. Hold on, bear with me just a second, I'll tell you who they were. At the CPUC, I met with Rafi Stepanian, Mohammed Stephen Tabli, Fadi Day, and Raymond Fugger, all representatives of the PUC, to investigate these fires. Ladies and gentlemen, not one of them was a utility engineer. Not one of them had a clue about what I was talking about. When I explained to them that these 2 wires are supposed to be separated by 12 inches, or there's a code that says 3 inches and there's one that says 12 inches. Their argument was, well, it technically is connected on each side of the pole, so technically it means it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is an electrical problem. When it's connected by an electrical bolt, that means there's electrical continuity, there's no separation. I was appalled by the fact that our California Public Utilities Commission does not have the expertise to understand one of the most basic transmission design errors that I've ever seen in my entire life. Furthermore, I went to, in February, oh, by the way, out of that meeting, this PUC promised this big investigation. I go down on February 7th, 2008. Who did they send? Stephen Tabli. Nice guy, no electrical background whatsoever. Confirmed there was electrical arcing, admitted to it to Jeff McDonald of the Union Tribune, and after that day, neither Mr. McDonald or myself was ever allowed to communicate with him again, at least verbally on the phone. He was directed not to talk to us. You got to ask yourself why. Why does the PUC not want to know or come public about what started this fire? The next step, in April 3rd of 2008, I got invited to a fire chiefs meeting down in San Diego, where literally all the fire captains attended. I was promised to a huge investigation. Everybody acted like they were all upset. I was introduced to a gentleman by the name of Howard Windsor, who was about to take over California, or Cal Fire in San Diego County. He assured me he was going to get to the bottom of it. I only to find out that 2 gentlemen taking notes in that meeting were on an advisory board for SDG&E, so technically you had the rooster watching the hen house. On April 16th, I go to yet another investigation on behalf of Cal Fire. Who shows up? One guy, by himself, non-electrical, no experience. His name was Jim Garrett. Why was that a disaster? Jim Garrett informed me he was the prosecutor that falsely prosecuted the Lost Hunter in 2003. We had a very heated discussion out there. Mr. Garrett would not allow me to show him where the Cedar Fire started. He would not allow me to show him where the Paradise Fire started. And quite honestly, it fell on deaf ears, and I'd be surprised if Mr. Garrett even made a report, because both CAL FIRE and the PUC has never came out and identified this as a potential problem. Now, it's electricity. SDG&E has been brilliant trying to keep me out of the limelight. The reason why they have not allowed me to have my deposition taken, I'm going to show you what they're so afraid of. I'm going to show you that this design starts fires. I'm going to show you that this design has arcing at ground level where it should never exist. Okay? So, take a look at this design. You have bolts connected together, you have arcing, you have dry grass growing up out in the middle of nowhere. You have high winds, low humidity, dry grass, and a system fault where arcing is going to occur. You have a fire. It's no difference than throwing the cigarette out the window. What's even more appalling, ladies and gentlemen, is San Diego Gas and Electric, PUC, and CAL FIRE has had this knowledge till 2007. I got retained on another case by a lady by the name of Jennifer Betts. In her efforts to preserve the evidence, SDG&E had a private field visit with her and myself. No other plaintiffs involved, which I think that's against the rules in the court of litigation, but that being said, this year, in 2015, I go out there to find this design has not been changed. What has SDG&E done? They were planning this huge steel pole replacement worth hundreds and thousands, maybe $1 billion. I have no idea what they're doing. The simple fix was a $20 bolt or a simple jumper at ground level. You're going to have to pay for that. They're going to justify that somehow to the PUC that that's necessary to start this fire. They've come out publicly and said they agree with the findings of CAL FIRE that 2 lines came together. Ladies and gentlemen, I looked at that spot. With binoculars, I could barely see the dot they're talking about where somehow these 2 69 kV lines came together. I'm here to tell you, impossible. I'm sure you've all seen what it looks like when a fuse blows. That, a 69,000 volt phase-to-phase fault delivers so much ground current, it's instantaneously, that line's on the ground, and yeah, that will start fires. That didn't start this fire. I'm in here to show you what happened. Now, before I demonstrate this, take a look at this picture, up close, look at here. This is a down guy, one of these anchors going into the ground with a metal cover. See this black lines leading right here? That's carbon from fire. This, ladies and gentlemen, is where the Witch Creek fire started. I showed this to CAL FIRE, I showed this to PUC, I showed this to San Diego Gas and Electric, I showed this to the city attorney, Mr. Aguirre. Fell on deaf ears. Nobody insisted on a meeting amongst the mines so people could learn and understand what started these fires. So here's the start of the Witch Creek fire. You can see the orange is where the bush on this side was on fire. This is the same spot right here. That's the bush. This fire, and it just spread from here. And see you later, ladies and gentlemen, the 2007 Witch Creek fire. Okay? Why is this a problem? Why has SDG&E not fixed this? I'm going to tell you why, ladies and gentlemen. Coming from a utility, I worked for Southern California Edison Company as an engineer. Our first priority was public safety. And no matter what happened, protect the public, fix it first. It took me a long time to understand that SDG&E has known about this and intentionally put your lives at risk and playing Russian roulette with your families and your households and your pets, everything that you own. Why? Because at the end of the day, when all these lawsuits are settled, they go to the PUC, which they're getting ready to do now for the 2007 fires, and get a rate increase and make you pay for everything that they cost, which I'm dead set against. They have a right to protect themselves in court, no doubt. They have a right to posture themselves, but what they do not have a right to do is jeopardize your safety. That's where I draw a line in the sand. When I found out that I made the determination that they knew what caused the 2003 Cedar fire, and I found out a gentleman got falsely prosecuted and they let that man's life get destroyed, ladies and gentlemen, that's why I'm here. I'm on a mission. I have a son and his wife that live in San Diego and a brand new grandbaby. I can't imagine what you folks live with day in and day night. If you knew what I knew, you wouldn't be able to sleep at night. You have executive management at SDG&E intentionally making decisions for money and returns and corporate profits and rate increases over your safety. Now let me show you this, what I've got here. This is a replica pole. I've got two down guys going into anchors just like what you see out here in the field. I've connected a 12-volt battery. So I've only got 12 volts on here. You can imagine what it would be like and what kind of arcing. It's when there's a system transmission fault. It's very short duration, but very high energy. Ladies and gentlemen, being a former utility engineer, I've walked into substations before where metal gates from ground faults were welded closed. I worked for Larry Davis, who's the pioneer behind this scheme to commit a corporate cover-up. On several other cases, I showed him where ground faults created holes in gas pipes and got him out of big expense on the gas company side, and it was the utility side. I showed him how a ground fault popped a big hole in a gas pipe. I showed him on another case where ground faults caused 3 condominiums to catch on fire simultaneously. I showed him where a transmission fault, where an airplane flew into a transmission line, there was explosions all over California, all directly related to that huge ground system fault. I understand this like there's no tomorrow. There's not a utility engineer that's going to dispute this. If you find any utility engineer who's got a relay protection background, who's put settings on relay protection, who has physically gone out and tested this stuff like I have, you're not going to find an engineer in the country to dispute this. So let me show you my demonstration here. I've got it connected. I'm going to put 12 volts on this. Now because we have high winds out in these areas, I'm going to grab the pole and move it back and forth. Okay, so I'm going to set this up here. This is my on-off switch. I'm going to put some glasses on just because I'm going to create a little arcing going on here. Okay, so let's just see what happens here. And see, I want you to just, if you don't understand electricity, if you don't understand anything about what I've shared with you, just watch what happens. I think a visual is everything. Watch what happens. See it? There you go, ladies and gentlemen. See that starting over there? That's the start of the Witch Creek fire. The difference being when it's a transmission fault, it's much hotter, much faster, it melts stuff. I'm going to shut this off right now before we get too much going here because I don't want to have to put out a fire, another one. Well, there it goes. Ladies and gentlemen, there's the start of your Witch Creek fire. Does it get any more simple than that? Now you got to ask yourself, okay, I'm going to blow this out. Hold on, it's going to go all over the place here. Hold on, let it just blow out for a second. Fortunately, I'm on a concrete floor here, which we're just going to let it die out. There we go. Fortunately, CAL FIRE wasn't there to put out the Witch Creek fire for you. Hold on a second here. There we go, it's out now. Okay. Now, you can see for yourself what started the fire. So I'm going to move this out of the way. And show, well, I'm going to leave this here because I'm going to show you one other really quick little tidbit of information. You saw arcing going on both sides. I'm going to show you how simple this is and what SDG&E could have done right out of the gate. A simple jumper across this connection point. Let me bend this here a little bit. Okay? A simple jumper across this point basically is what we call a shunt in the electrical world. If you have a loose connection and you put a wire on it and put the same potential on both sides, you're not going to get any arcing. So watch what happens. See if it arcs there. See, it's still arcing on the other side over there, nothing on this side. Ladies and gentlemen, a $20 to $30 fix. Now, if I took the time to disconnect this wire here and move it down 12 inches like it's supposed to be, there's no path for current to flow, no arcing. A $20 bolt, ladies and gentlemen. So in a very simple context, very simple demonstration, you can see for yourself, ladies and gentlemen, the start of the 2000 Witch Creek fire, the 2003 Cedar fire, which I have documentation to prove that as well, and the 2003 Paradise fire, which I also have documentation to prove. I have a notebook full of documentations on everything that Larry Davis knows. I have documentation that shows everything that the folks at the PUC know. I went to a public hearing down there and provided a full set of documents that if you'd like to see what documents I've given them, you can go to my website at theelectricalexpert.com and see everything that I've downloaded. That website was created for you. That website was created for you to see what politicians I have sent information to trying to get help. You can see what I've given to the PUC. Ladies and gentlemen, I've even sent a letter to the White House trying to get federal intervention because what is going on in San Diego is a corporate cover-up. You've got two government agencies in bed with them as far as I'm concerned. You've got CAL FIRE and the Public Utilities Commission looking the other way. Yet SDG&E is going up for a rate increase. Do you really think the PUC is going to deny them if they won't even understand or have a meeting with me to understand what started these fires? You've got Stephanie Donovan going on the air and saying, oh, well, no one's proven what started these fires. It's because they won't let me, ladies and gentlemen. Every deposition I've been noticed for, they spent tremendous amount of money keeping me out and keeping my information out of the public's eye. They're in court today doing the exact same thing for one that's scheduled on Monday. So you decide, ladies and gentlemen, you need to rally together. Hopefully, somewhere in our federal government, somebody in an admission, I'm not sure about this current administration, maybe after the elections. I'm just an engineer trying to protect you guys. My family lives down there. I've got a lot of friends that live down there. If you knew what I knew, I'm not sure what else I can do other than to post this video on YouTube. Hopefully, if you know anybody in the federal government, there needs to be federal intervention. There needs to be an investigation. Each and every one of these people who have looked the other way and jeopardized your lives for the last 8 years without fixing this should be fully held accountable to the full extent of the law. Thank you so much for your time. If you have any questions, please contact me at my website again, www.theelectricalexpert.com. Thank you very much.